aka Calypso, known as Bryce, and I'm here to tell you about mystical numerology. Sacred geometry is the bomb. Sacred geometry, mystical numerology is my greatest passion. And what makes it my greatest passion is the sacred geometry that exists on this planet, in the cosmos, and I can interpret within mystical numerology. Sacred geometry now is being looked at by science, because science is believing that they made a mistake, that everything is not substance and particle. They have found sacred geometry in the smallest organism that's alive, and that is the virus, and it's in the form of the triangle, or the tetrahedron. And so they find it in our smallest living organism, the virus, and then they also find it in the universe. NASA has found sacred geometry in the universe, which is the dodecahedron. And that dodecahedron means 2 plus 10 faces. And that is usually taking 12 pentagons and putting them together to create divinity. And that's what the dodecahedron is. It's the sign of divinity which exists above us. Sacred geometry exists and is mystical numerology. All of the patterns that I spoke about, the monad, the dyad, the tetrad, the triad, the heptad, the hexad, the octagon, the ennead, and the decad, it's all within your sacred geometry, which exists in mystical numerology, which I can interpret. The one thing to really embrace about sacred geometry is that there is progression within it, and there's always movement. In sacred geometry, everything is within movement and change, and everything must transform. So we're not always a triangle, we're not always a cube, but we have the sacred geometry of our proportion, meaning our frequency. Either we can raise these vibrations within inside of ourselves. Say we raise the 4, and the 4 is the cube, and that contains, but that's what builds structure and framework. So some of us may have the cube, the sacred geometry of the cube inside of us, and we may make it very large, meaning that we'll rise our frequency up to embrace the vibration of the cube so that we have structure, we have security, we have stability in our lives. But it is up to our thought process to either raise it or lower it. So we may feel a little contained by the cube, which it does do, it does contain, but it creates framework that we all need, and it paves paths. So we may want to bring up a greater self-expression that exists within the triad, which is the triangle, and that would be joy and more self-creativity. So there's sacred geometry in us, but it's best to see the movement, the cube, a small cube going into the triangle becoming larger, or at another time the cube becoming larger than the triangle, depending on our thought process.